My family argued over hospital bills while I was unconscious, then blamed me for ruining dinner when I survived against all odds. The first thing I became aware of was pressure. Not pain exactly, though that came later. Just this sense of weight pressing down on my chest, my limbs, my eyelids. Everything felt distant and muffled, like I was underwater. I could hear sounds, but they didn't connect to meaning right away. Beeping. Footsteps. Voices that rose and fell in rhythm, but not sense. Then the voices sharpened. Not all at once, but gradually, like someone turning up the volume on a radio buried under blankets. We can't keep paying for this indefinitely. My uncle's voice. Clipped. Annoyed. The insurance won't cover everything. Someone needs to make a decision. My aunt. She sounded tired. I tried to move. Tried to open my eyes. Nothing responded. My body was a stranger, refusing commands. Well, what do you want me to do? My mother now. Defensive. I didn't ask for this. A pause. Shuffling. The scrape of a chair. I'm just saying we need to be realistic. The doctors aren't promising anything. So what? We just give up. I'm talking about the bill, Linda. The bill that keeps getting bigger while we sit here. The beeping continued, steady and indifferent. I floated in the dark, trying to understand what I was hearing. Trying to make my fingers move, my mouth open, anything to let them know I was still here. But nothing worked. And they kept talking like I'd already gone. Rewind 3 days. I was driving home from work, the route I'd taken 1,000 times. It was raining, but not hard, just enough to make the road slick and the headlights smear across my windshield. I remember thinking about what to make for dinner. I remember the light turning yellow ahead and deciding whether to accelerate or brake. Then there was a truck. Not in my lane. Not supposed to be there. It came from the right, through the intersection, and I had maybe half a second to register what was happening before impact. The sound was enormous. Metal shrieking, glass exploding, my own voice screaming, or maybe just the air forced from my lungs. The car spun. The world tilted sideways, then upside down. Then I lost track of which way was which. Then silence. Not peaceful silence. Heavy silence. The kind that presses on your eardrums and makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Except I couldn't tell if my heart was still beating. I couldn't feel my legs. Couldn't move my arms. There was something warm running down the side of my face and the taste of copper in my mouth. I heard sirens eventually. Heard people shouting. Felt hands on me, careful and urgent. Someone said my name. Someone else said something about a pulse. Then there was movement, light, more voices, and finally nothing at all. When awareness came back, it came in pieces. Never all at once. Never clear. I'd surface into sound and sensation for what felt like minutes, but might have been seconds, then sink back into the dark. Each time I surfaced, I understood a little more. Hospital. ICU. Machines breathing for me. Tubes in places tubes shouldn't be. Pain held back by medication that made everything soft and distant. And voices. Always voices. Sometimes it was medical staff. Calm, professional tones discussing things I couldn't quite follow. Numbers. Readings. Concerns about swelling, internal bleeding, brain function. They spoke about me like I was a complicated puzzle they were trying to solve. But other times it was my family. And they sounded nothing like people sitting vigil at a loved one's bedside. How long did they say this could go on? My uncle again. They don't know. Could be days. Could be weeks. My mother. Jesus Christ. Don't start, Michael. I'm not starting anything. I'm asking reasonable questions. Someone has to. A long exhale. Footsteps. The rustle of fabric. Someone sitting down heavily. We had plans this weekend, my aunt said. Quiet, like she was confessing something. I know. The reservation is non-refundable. I know. Silence. The machines beeped. I tried again to move, to make a sound, to do anything that would prove I could hear them. Nothing. Maybe one of us could still go, my aunt continued. I mean, there's nothing we can do here anyway. The nurses said they'd call if anything changed. Barbara. My mother's voice held a warning. I'm just saying. I know what you're saying. More silence. Then my uncle spoke, quieter than before. Look, nobody wants to be the one to say it, but we all know the odds here. Even if he wakes up, the doctor said there could be brain damage. Paralysis. We need to think about long-term costs. He's my son, and I love him too. But love doesn't pay medical bills. Someone needs to be practical. The conversation drifted after that, became less distinct. I sank back down into the dark, their words following me like weights. I need to tell you about my family, so this makes sense. We weren't close, not the way some families are. No big Sunday dinners or holiday traditions that everyone actually looked forward to. We were more like people who stayed in touch out of obligation, who saw each other at weddings and funerals, and occasionally birthdays if someone remembered to organize something. My uncle Michael was my mother's older brother. He'd done well in real estate, liked everyone to know it, drove a car that cost more than most people's houses, and took vacations that he described in detail, whether you asked or not. He was the one who always picked up the check at dinner and then somehow made sure you felt like you owed him. My Aunt Barbara was his wife. Quiet mostly. Agreeable. The kind of person who smoothed over conflicts by changing the subject or suggesting everyone was just tired and should talk later. She planned everything months in advance and got genuinely stressed when plans changed. My mother was the younger sibling, the one who'd struggled more. Divorced when I was 8, worked 2 jobs for years, never quite achieved the stability Michael seemed to find effortless. She loved me. I knew that. But she also resented how hard everything had been, and sometimes that resentment leaked out in small ways. Comments about how I'd made things harder by being a difficult kid, a picky eater, needing braces, wanting to play sports that required equipment and fees. I'd learned early to be low maintenance, to not ask for much, to handle my own problems. It kept the peace. But lying in that hospital bed, unable to move or speak or defend myself, there was no way to be low maintenance. I was maximum maintenance, maximum cost, maximum inconvenience. And they were noticing. The arguments got worse. I'd surfaced to consciousness, and there they'd be, voices tense and sharp. Someone had looked at the itemized bill and lost it over the line items. Someone else had called the insurance company and gotten nowhere. They were all stressed, all exhausted, all ready for this to be over. They want to do another CT scan, my mother said during one of these surfacing moments. More tests? What's the point? Michael, they need to check for brain swelling. Fine. Okay. How much? Does it matter? Of course it matters. We're not made of money, Linda. So what do you want me to tell them? No tests. Let him die. Don't be dramatic. I'm asking if there are cheaper alternatives. Cheaper alternatives to making sure my son's brain isn't hemorrhaging? You know what I mean. But I wasn't sure I didn't know what he meant. Or maybe I knew exactly what he meant and didn't want to. The days blurred. Or maybe they were hours. Time didn't work right in the dark. I'd hear the nurses come and go, adjusting things, checking monitors. They were kind. They talked to me sometimes, told me what they were doing, spoke like they believed I could hear them. The doctors came too, discussing my case in measured tones. Guarded optimism. Concerning signs. Wait and see. I was stable but unresponsive. The body was healing, but the brain remained quiet. They'd done everything they could. Now it was just waiting. My family waited in shifts. I could tell by the different combinations of voices. Sometimes just my mother. Sometimes my uncle and aunt. Once I heard a cousin I hadn't seen in years. Someone who asked a few polite questions and then clearly didn't know what else to say. And through it all, the undercurrent. The tension. The unspoken question of how long this could go on and what happened if it didn't end soon. Then one night, or maybe it was afternoon, I heard something I shouldn't have. My aunt and uncle were there without my mother. I could tell because their voices had that particular tone people use when the person they're being careful around isn't present. I talked to a lawyer, my uncle said. What kind of lawyer? Estate planning. Just exploring options. Michael. What? It's responsible. If he doesn't wake up, someone needs to have made decisions about DNR orders, life support, all of that. Linda won't think about it rationally. She's his mother. Exactly. That's why she can't be objective. Rustling. A sigh. Do you really think it would be simpler? My aunt asked. So quiet I almost didn't hear it. A pause. Too long. I didn't say that. But you thought it. Barbara, don't. We all thought it. That's the horrible part. We're sitting here doing the math. Silence. The machines beeped. My heart, according to the monitor, was steady. But inside I felt something crack. They weren't talking about saving me. They were talking about managing the aftermath of my absence. Preparing for a version of the future where I didn't complicate things anymore. And some part of them thought that would be easier. I let go in that moment. Not of life exactly, but of the effort I'd been making to surface, to fight back toward consciousness. What was the point? They didn't want me to come back. They wanted closure. An ending they could mourn briefly and then move past. So I stopped fighting and sank into the dark and let whatever was going to happen just happen. Except my body had other plans. Something changed in my brain chemistry, or my healing reached a threshold, or pure chance intervened. The doctors would later use words like remarkable and unexpected. What I knew was that suddenly I could feel my fingers, then my toes, then the tube down my throat, which made me gag and set off alarms. People rushed in. There was controlled chaos, medical voices giving instructions, hands on me doing things I couldn't track. The tube came out and I choked and coughed, and someone told me to breathe slow, that I was okay, that I was back. I opened my eyes. The light was excruciating. Everything was too bright, too sharp. Faces swam above me. A nurse, a doctor, and behind them, my family. My mother looked shocked. Actually shocked, like she'd seen something impossible. My aunt had her hand over her mouth. My uncle's expression was harder to read. Surprise, yes, but something else underneath it. "Welcome back," the doctor said, smiling. "You gave us quite a scare." I tried to talk, but my throat was raw, destroyed by the tube. Nothing came out but a croak. "Don't try to speak yet. Just rest. You're going to be okay." The medical team did their checks. Pupils responsive. Movement in all extremities. Cognitive function appeared intact. "Miracle," someone said. "Lucky," someone else agreed. My family stood against the wall, watching. When the doctors finally left, and it was just us, my mother approached the bed. "Hey, sweetie," she said. Her voice was soft but strange, like she was reading from a script. "We were so worried." I looked at her, at my aunt, at my uncle. None of them would hold eye contact for long. "We should call people," my aunt said. "Let everyone know he's awake." Yeah, we should." My mother pulled out her phone. My uncle checked his watch. "What time is the reservation?" Everyone froze. "Michael," my aunt said. "What?" "I'm just asking. We can still make it if we leave in the next hour." My mother stared at him. "Are you serious right now?" "He's awake. He's fine. The crisis is over. We've been here for 4 days. I think we're allowed to keep our dinner plans. He just woke up from a coma. And he's stable. The doctor said so. What are we supposed to do? Sit here staring at him?" I watched this exchange from the bed. Still couldn't speak. Could barely process what I was hearing. "You're unbelievable," my mother said. "I'm practical. Someone has to be. And frankly, this whole thing has been incredibly disruptive. The least we can do is try to salvage some normalcy." Normalcy? Yes. We had plans. We shouldn't have to cancel our entire lives because of an accident. My aunt touched his arm. "Maybe we should just focus on." "I am focused. I'm focused on the fact that we've put our lives on hold for days, and now that he's awake, we can take a breath. That's all I'm saying." He looked at me then, directly. "You understand, right? We're happy you're okay. Really. But we've all been through a lot." I stared back at him. This man who'd discussed giving up on me while I lay unconscious. Who'd considered the simplicity of my death. Who was now standing in my hospital room complaining about inconvenience. And all I could think was, "You blame me for ruining your dinner." The next few hours were a blur of medical tests and visits from hospital staff checking on the miracle patient. My family stayed for another hour, then left to make their reservation. My mother stayed longer, but eventually she went too, promising to come back in the morning. When they were gone, my nurse came in. Her name was Kelly, and she'd been one of the voices I'd heard most often in the dark. "How are you really doing?" she asked while checking my vitals. I still couldn't talk much, but I managed. "Tired. I bet. You've been through hell." She adjusted something on the floor. "Your family seems relieved." I didn't respond. She glanced at me, then away. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyway. I heard some of their conversations. "When you were under." My heart rate picked up. The monitor showed it. "I just want you to know," she continued quietly, "that what you heard, if you heard anything, that's not normal. That's not how family is supposed to act. And you're not imagining things." Tears burned behind my eyes. I hadn't cried since waking up. Hadn't let myself feel anything except confusion. But hearing someone acknowledge it, validate it, something broke loose. "It's okay," Kelly said. She handed me a tissue. "You survived something terrible. The accident and everything after. You're allowed to feel however you feel about it." She stayed with me for a while, not saying much else. Just being present. Being kind in a way my own family hadn't managed. When she finally left, I lay in the dark hospital room and let myself remember everything I'd heard. Every complaint, every calculation, every moment they treated my survival as an inconvenience rather than a miracle. And I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly. Something colder, clearer. I'd survived. Against their expectations, against their quiet hopes, against the odds. I was still here. But the family I thought I'd had, the people I'd believed would fight for me, want me to live, celebrate my return, they died while I was unconscious. And no amount of backtracking or awkward relief was going to resurrect them. When my mother visited the next morning, she brought flowers and acted like nothing had happened. Chatted about the dinner they'd gone to, how nice the restaurant was, how they'd toasted to my recovery. "We were all so scared," she said. "But you pulled through. You always were a fighter." I watched her talk, watched her rewrite the narrative in real time. turning days of complaints about bills and inconvenience into a story of devoted vigil and profound relief. The doctors say you'll need physical therapy, she continued. But insurance should cover most of that. We'll figure it out. Like she'd been on my side all along. Michael feels terrible about yesterday, she added. You know how he gets when he's stressed. He didn't mean anything by it. And there it was. The minimization. The request for understanding. The gentle pressure to let it go. He's been calling nonstop, making sure you're okay. He really does love you. I finally spoke, my voice still rough. I heard you. She stopped mid-sentence. What? In the ICU. I heard the conversations. All of them. Her face went through several expressions very quickly. Confusion. Realization. Panic. Then something practiced slid over it all. Honey, you were unconscious. Sometimes the brain creates false memories after trauma. The doctors said. I heard you arguing about bills. About being realistic. About your dinner plans. We were stressed. People say things they don't mean when they're under pressure. I heard Uncle Michael say it would be simpler. She went pale. He didn't mean that the way it sounded. Then how did he mean it? Silence. She looked at the flowers she'd brought, the cheerful yellow blooms that suddenly seemed obscene. You have to understand, she said finally. We didn't know if you'd wake up. We had to think about practical matters. That doesn't mean we didn't care. You complained about me ruining your dinner reservation. That was thoughtless. Michael apologizes. No, he doesn't. He thinks he's right. She stood up, agitated. What do you want from me? Yes, we talked about difficult things. Yes, we were worried about money. We're human. We're not perfect. But we stayed with you. We were there. You were there counting the hours until you could leave. That's not fair, isn't it? We stared at each other across the hospital bed. She looked hurt, defensive, like I was being unreasonable by confronting her with her own words. I think you should go, I said. Don't do this. Don't push us away because you're angry. I'm not angry. I'm just done. Done with what? Pretending. She left without the flowers. I had the nurse remove them later anyway. My uncle called that afternoon. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail saying we needed to talk, that there had been misunderstandings, that family was family, and we needed to move past this. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. My aunt sent a text. Please don't let this tear the family apart. What happened was difficult for everyone. We all handled it imperfectly, but we love you. I didn't respond. Recovery was slow. Physical therapy was painful. The trauma of the accident had done significant damage that required weeks of work to overcome. But I did the work. Showed up to every session. Pushed through every exercise. And I did it alone. My family tried to visit a few more times in those first weeks. I refused to see them. The nurses ran interference, told them I was sleeping or in therapy or not up for visitors. Eventually, they stopped trying as often. I got messages, calls, emails asking me to reconsider, to talk this through, to remember that they were family. My mother sent long texts about forgiveness and moving forward and not holding grudges. But none of them ever actually apologized. None of them acknowledged what they'd said, what they'd revealed about themselves in those moments when they thought I couldn't hear. They just wanted me to forget, to move on, to go back to being the low-maintenance version of myself who didn't make things difficult. But I couldn't. I remembered everything. 3 months after the accident, I was cleared to go home. I'd been staying in a rehabilitation facility, working on getting my strength back. When I was finally discharged, my mother offered to let me stay with her while I continued recovery. I declined, moved into a small apartment instead. It was harder, doing everything alone. But it was honest. 6 months after the accident, my uncle called. I answered this time. We need to talk about the family reunion, he said. No greeting. No asking how I was. There's a family reunion? 4th of July weekend. Same place as always. Barbara has been planning it for months. I'm not coming. Don't be childish. This has gone on long enough. I agree. So stop calling. You're really going to throw away your whole family over some things that were said in a stressful situation? Yes. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you know what your problem is? You never learn to let things go. You hold grudges. Always have. Maybe. Your mother is devastated. She cries about this. She cried about a lot of things when I was growing up. It never changed anything. God, you're bitter. I'm honest. Same thing, apparently. He hung up. I sat in my apartment and felt nothing. No guilt. No regret. Just a quiet certainty that I'd made the right choice. A year after the accident, I was mostly healed. Still had some lingering pain, some limitations. But I was working again, living independently, building a life that had nothing to do with the people who'd raised me. My mother sent a birthday card. Inside was a long note about how proud she was of my recovery, how much she missed me, how she hoped we could find our way back to each other. I read it once, then put it in a drawer with all the other cards and letters I'd received over the months. Evidence, documentation, proof that they'd tried, at least on the surface. But trying wasn't the same as changing, and I didn't need them to change. I just needed them to leave me alone. The thing about surviving something like this is that it clarifies everything. You learn who people really are when the crisis is happening, not after when they've had time to workshop their response. You learn what matters to them, what they prioritize, who they'll fight for. And I learned that to my family. I was an expense, a complication, someone they loved in theory but resented in practice. That knowledge hurt. Still hurts sometimes, late at night when I think about what I lost. Not just the people themselves, but the idea of them. The fantasy of a family who would choose me, who would want me to live, who would celebrate my survival instead of mourning the inconvenience of it. But I also learned something else. I'm stronger than they gave me credit for. Strong enough to survive not just the accident, but everything after. Strong enough to choose myself even when it meant being alone. Kelly, the nurse, sends me a card every year on the anniversary of the day I woke up. She calls it my second birthday. Inside, she always writes the same thing. You did it. You're still here. That matters. And she's right. It does matter. Maybe not to the people who were supposed to care, but to me, to the doctors and nurses who fought to save me, to the strangers who've heard my story and told me theirs. I survived against all odds. And then I survived the people who thought my survival was an inconvenience. That's worth something. If you made it this far, thank you. I know this story doesn't have the satisfying confrontation you might have wanted, where I stood up to my family and made them see what they'd done. But that's not how it works in real life. Sometimes the only power you have is to walk away, to refuse to pretend, to choose the hard truth over the comfortable lie. And sometimes that's enough. If you've ever felt like a burden to the people who should love you, if you've ever had to choose between family and self-respect, if you've ever survived something only to realize the real fight was what came after, I see you. Your story matters. Your survival matters. Hit that like button if this resonated with you. Subscribe for more real stories about the complicated truth of family and survival. And leave a comment if you've ever had to make a choice like this. I read them all. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves. And remember, you're allowed to choose you.